His stunt double collapsed on set, hiding a painful secret. When The Rock found out, he did something no one expected, pausing Hollywood to save a life. The cameras rolled, lights blazed, and the set hummed with intensity. It was just another day in Hollywood's biggest action blockbuster, another death-defying stunt that would leave audiences on the edge of their seats. But for Dwayne Johnson, this was more than just another film. It was about trust, brotherhood, the unbreakable bond between two warriors who had fought side by side, take after take, year after year, and no one had fought harder than Jack Carter. For over a decade, Jack had been Dwayne's shadow in the fire, the man who took every fall, every explosion, every gut-wrenching impact that made their movies legendary. He was the guy who flipped cars, leaped off rooftops, and got slammed through walls, all while Dwayne got the applause. But Jack never cared about the spotlight. He loved the work, loved the danger, loved the art of making the impossible look real. He and Dwayne weren't just co-workers, they were brothers. Dwayne glanced across the set and saw Jack stretching, rolling his shoulders like he always did before a big stunt. But something was off. His movements were slower, his face tighter, his skin a shade too pale. Dwayne had known Jack for too long not to notice. "Yo, you good?" Dwayne called out, frowning. Jack smirked, his signature cocky grin that had always been his way of brushing things off. "What, you worried I'll outshine you today?" Dwayne huffed a laugh. "Man, you outshine me every day." Jack chuckled, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of exhaustion, something deeper than just being tired. Before Dwayne could push further, the director's voice boomed across the set. "All right, places, let's get this right, people." Today's scene was brutal. A high-speed rooftop chase ending in a gut-wrenching 3-story fall onto a parked car. Nothing Jack hadn't done before, but as he walked toward the stunt rig, Dwayne felt an unease he couldn't shake. Jack turned back and flashed him a thumbs up. Dwayne forced a grin, but deep down, something wasn't right. 3, 2, 1. Action! Jack took off, sprinting across the rooftop. His timing was perfect, his movements sharp. He leaped over a railing, pushed off the ledge, and then the world seemed to slow. His body twisted in the air, a perfect execution. But the moment he hit the car below, something was wrong. Jack didn't move. For a breathless second, the set fell silent. Then, chaos. Crew members rushed forward, shouting his name, but Dwayne was already moving, shoving past everyone, his heart hammering in his chest. Jack lay sprawled on the crushed hood of the car, his chest rising and falling in short, uneven breaths. His face was pale, his lips parted as if he were trying to speak. Dwayne knelt beside him, gripping his arm. "Jack, talk to me, man." Jack's lips twitched into a weak grin. "Guess I finally made a stunt look real, huh?" Dwayne let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "Yeah, you idiot, but you're supposed to get up after." Jack tried. His body tensed as he pushed his elbows against the car hood, but the moment he moved, his arms buckled, and he collapsed back down. A groan of pain slipped from his throat. Dwayne's stomach clenched. This wasn't right. The paramedics on set rushed over, pushing Dwayne back, but he wouldn't let go of Jack's arm. He saw it now. The weight loss, the exhaustion, the way Jack had been hiding how hard things had gotten. Jack had been pushing himself too far, and now he couldn't hide it anymore. A cold, awful realization settled in Dwayne's chest. Jack wasn't just injured, he was sick, and he had been hiding it all along. Dwayne sat stiffly in the hospital waiting room, his hands clasped together, his knee bouncing with restless energy. The set had erupted into chaos the moment Jack collapsed, but Dwayne had barely heard anything beyond the pounding in his own chest. Jack had been rushed off in an ambulance, and without a second thought, Dwayne had followed, ignoring the crew's reassurances that everything was probably fine. Nothing about this was fine. Jack had taken thousands of hits, endured brutal falls, walked away from crashes that should have left him broken, but this time he hadn't gotten up. And Dwayne couldn't ignore the way Jack had looked before it happened. The weight loss, the fatigue, the way he had pressed a hand against his ribs, as if the pain wasn't new. Jack had been hiding something, and now Dwayne was terrified to find out what it was. The hospital doors swung open, and a doctor stepped out, scanning the room. Dwayne stood immediately. "Jack Carter?" His voice was firm, but his heart pounded against his ribs. The doctor nodded. "Are you family?" Dwayne hesitated, then clenched his jaw. "Yeah, I'm his family. Something in the doctor's expression shifted, as if he understood the weight of those words. He motioned for Dwayne to follow. They walked down a quiet hallway, the fluorescent lights above buzzing softly, the scent of antiseptic heavy in the air. When they reached Jack's room, the doctor turned to face him. "I'm going to be honest with you," he said gently. "Jack's condition is serious." Dwayne's stomach twisted. "How serious?" The doctor exhaled, looking at him carefully. "Stage 4. Cancer." Dwayne felt the words hit him like a freight train. For a second, he just stood there, his mind refusing to process what he had just heard. His hands clenched into fists, his nails digging into his palms. "No," he muttered, shaking his head. "That's not... No. He was just on set this morning. He was fine." The doctor's face softened. "He's been sick for a while, a long while. The fact that he's still been working through it, it's remarkable. But his body is shutting down. He's pushing himself past his limits." Dwayne barely heard the last part. His heartbeat was a roar in his ears. Jack had cancer, and he had never told him. His legs felt heavy as he stepped into the room. Jack lay in the hospital bed, IVs hooked to his arms, his skin paler than before, but when his eyes opened and he saw Dwayne standing there, he smirked, like none of this was a big deal. "Man," Jack muttered, his voice hoarse, "you look like you just saw a ghost." Dwayne swallowed the lump in his throat. He wanted to be angry, wanted to shake Jack for keeping something like this from him, but all he could feel was this unbearable weight pressing down on his chest. Jack sighed, shifting slightly. "So, you know." Dwayne stepped closer, his voice sharp. "You knew you had cancer, and you still kept working? Still did every stunt like nothing was wrong?" Jack's smirk faded. He stared at the ceiling for a long moment before finally speaking. "I didn't want anyone treating me differently." His voice was quiet, but there was a stubborn edge to it. "Didn't want pity. Didn't want people looking at me like I was already dead." Dwayne ran a hand over his face, exhaling sharply. "Jack, this isn't about pity. This is about your life." Jack turned his head to look at him. His expression was tired, but his eyes still held that same fire, the same unshakable determination that had carried him through years of impossible stunts. "I didn't want to stop," he admitted. "I knew if I told anyone, they'd pull me off the set. I wasn't ready for that. I just wanted to keep doing what I love for as long as I could." Dwayne stared at him, his throat tight. He understood. God, he understood, but that didn't make it any easier to accept. Jack sighed, giving him a weak grin. "You're not going to start crying, are you?" Dwayne let out a breath that was almost a laugh, but his hands were still clenched at his sides. "Shut up, man." Silence settled between them, heavy and unspoken. Then Dwayne spoke, his voice low but firm. "You're not fighting this alone. You hear me?" Jack gave him a look, as if already preparing to argue, but Dwayne cut him off before he could start. "I don't care what you wanted. I don't care if you thought you had to do this by yourself. You don't. I got you. I always got you." Jack looked away for a moment, exhaling. When he looked back, there was something raw in his expression, something unguarded. He nodded once. Dwayne pulled up a chair and sat beside him. He wasn't going anywhere. Not this time. Dwayne sat in the hospital chair, arms crossed, watching Jack with a look that could break concrete. Jack, ever the tough guy, was trying to act like this was no big deal. He had always been good at masking pain. After all, that's what stunt doubles did. But this wasn't just another bruise, another broken rib that he could walk off. "You're wasting your time, man," Jack muttered, shifting slightly against the pillows. His voice was weaker than he probably realized. "I'll be back on set soon. Just give me a couple of days." Dwayne clenched his jaw. His patience, already razor thin, snapped. "A couple of days? Jack, you have stage 4 cancer. You've been working like nothing's wrong, taking brutal hits, risking your damn life, and you're telling me you'll be back in a couple of days?" His voice was low, but the frustration in it was sharp. Jack sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. He looked exhausted, more than Dwayne had ever seen him. "What do you want me to say? That I should have told you? That I should have quit and sat around waiting to die?" His eyes flickered with something defensive, something vulnerable. "That's not me, Dee. I needed to keep going." Dwayne exhaled, pressing his fingers against his temples. "No, Jack. What you needed was help, and you didn't ask for it." Jack stared at the ceiling, silent. Dwayne leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. His voice softened, but the weight in his words remained. I get it. You didn't want people looking at you differently. Didn't want to feel weak. But, man, you're my brother. You didn't have to do this alone. Jack swallowed hard. He looked like he wanted to argue, but for once, he didn't. A knock at the door interrupted them. A nurse entered, checking Jack's vitals. Dwayne watched as Jack winced slightly when she adjusted his IV. Just a slight movement, but enough to confirm what Dwayne already knew. Jack wasn't just sick, he was in pain, constantly, and he had been hiding it for months. The nurse finished up and left, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, without warning, Dwayne stood. He pulled out his phone and started typing. Jack frowned. What are you doing? Fixing this, Dwayne said simply. His tone left no room for argument. Jack groaned. D, don't. Too late. Dwayne hit the call button and walked toward the window, his back to Jack. Jack tried sitting up. Who the hell are you calling? Dwayne didn't answer. A few seconds later, he spoke into the phone. Yeah, it's me. I need you to shut down production. Jack's head snapped up. Dwayne, what the... Dwayne turned, holding up a hand to silence him. I don't care what the contracts say. The movie can wait. His voice was steady, unshakable. My guy needs me. Jack blinked, momentarily stunned into silence. Dwayne kept talking. Yeah, I need a full medical team. Best specialists, whatever it takes. Money isn't a problem. He paused, listening, then nodded. Good. Make it happen. He hung up and turned back to Jack, his expression unreadable. Jack let out a breath, shaking his head. Man, you're really doing this? Dwayne pulled up a chair again, sitting across from him. Yeah, he said simply. Jack ran a hand over his face. You just paused an entire Hollywood production for me? Dwayne's expression didn't waver. I'd pause the whole damn world if I had to. Jack let out a quiet chuckle, but there was something in his eyes, a mix of gratitude and disbelief. You really are insane, you know that? Dwayne smirked. Yeah, but I'm your kind of insane. Silence settled between them again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It wasn't filled with unspoken words or things left unsaid. It was just understanding. Jack exhaled, shaking his head. So, what now? You gonna babysit me until I magically get better? Dwayne shrugged. Something like that. Jack studied him for a long moment, then sighed. D, you know how this ends, right? Dwayne's jaw tightened. He knew what Jack was saying. The odds weren't in his favor, but that didn't mean he was giving up. We don't know how this ends, Dwayne said firmly. What we do know is that you're not going through it alone. Jack swallowed. He looked away, blinking rapidly, and for the first time since this whole thing started, he let his guard down. Dwayne didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. He just sat there, making it clear that no matter what happened next, he wasn't going anywhere. The production crew stood in stunned silence, waiting for the cameras to roll. But today was different. Today wasn't just another day of filming. There was a different kind of energy in the air, something heavier, something more meaningful. Everyone knew why they were here, what this moment meant, and who it was for. Dwayne stood at the center of it all, adjusting his wrist wraps, his mind racing. He had made sure every single detail was perfect. The script, the scene, the timing. All of it had been rewritten for one reason. This wasn't just a movie anymore. This was Jack's moment. Jack sat in his wheelchair near the set, watching everything unfold. His once strong frame had thinned, his skin paler than before, but his spirit? Unshaken. He still had that same fire in his eyes, even as his body weakened. Man, you really pulled some strings for this one, Jack muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. Dwayne smirked. You deserve it. Jack let out a breath, his eyes scanning the massive set. So, you're really giving me the final scene? Dwayne turned to face him fully. No, Jack. I'm giving you the ending you earned. Jack swallowed hard, his throat tight. He had spent years throwing himself into walls, off buildings, and through glass, for other people's glory. But this was different. This was his. The crew took their places, the cameras focused. The final stunt, the one meant for Dwayne, now belonged to Jack. Jack was strapped into the rig, his heart pounding in his chest. The pain in his body was there, constant. But right now, he wasn't sick. Right now, He was the hero. The director's voice cut through the silence. Rolling. And action. The explosion triggered. Jack sprinted forward, leaping from a crumbling rooftop, twisting in midair before crashing into the enemy with perfect precision. The moment was flawless. The impact, the energy, the way he hit the ground. It was all exactly how he had always done it. Effortless. Legendary. The crew erupted into cheers, claps, whistles, shouts of pure admiration. Even the hardened stunt team, men who had seen it all, had tears in their eyes. Jack lay on the mat, staring up at the ceiling, his chest rising and falling. For the first time in his career, he wasn't just the stunt guy. He was the moment. Dwayne rushed forward, pulling him up with a grin. You did it, man. Jack, breathless, just chuckled. Damn right I did. The director called cut, but no one moved. The applause didn't stop. The crew stood around him, clapping, cheering his name. Some had tears rolling down their faces. Everyone knew what this meant. And then, without warning, Dwayne grabbed the walkie-talkie from the director's hand and spoke directly into the main audio system. Ladies and gentlemen, today, we honor a legend, a man who's risked everything, given everything, and never once took the credit. But today, the world knows his name. The giant LED screens around the set flickered on, and suddenly, a highlight reel of Jack's best stunts over the years played for everyone to see. Stunt after stunt, crash after crash, hit after hit. Jack had been there for every heart-stopping moment in film history. Jack's throat tightened as he watched. He had spent his entire career in the background, but today, he was front and center. Dwayne stepped beside him, his voice steady but thick with emotion. Jack Carter, you are the greatest stuntman I've ever known. And more than that, you are my brother. Jack's lips trembled, and he blinked rapidly. He never expected this. Never in his life. Dwayne reached into a box and pulled out something that made the entire set gasp. A custom-made championship belt. It was solid gold, with bold letters engraved across the front. Jack Carter, the real hero. Dwayne placed it in Jack's hands. The weight of it made Jack exhale sharply. This was real. This was his. For the first time, Jack Carter couldn't speak. He just clutched the belt to his chest, his vision blurring. Dwayne placed a hand on his shoulder, squeezing firmly. You'll always be a champion, Jack. The moment stretched, filled with emotions too big to contain. No one rushed. No one looked away. And in that instant, Jack knew. His legacy would never be forgotten. The night of the movie premiere was unlike anything Jack had ever experienced. He had walked red carpets before, but always in the background. Just another stunt man among the crowd. This time, he was the moment everyone was waiting for. Dwayne stood beside him, guiding him through the flashing cameras and roaring applause. Jack, once a man who thrived in the shadows, was now in the spotlight. His name was everywhere, his story shared across the world. Fans, actors, and fellow stunt performers clapped as he made his way to a seat. And for the first time in his life, Jack let himself take it all in. When the movie started, the audience watched in awe as the final scene unfolded. The heroic leap, the perfect landing, the raw intensity. Jack Carter's last stunt had become a legendary moment in cinema. His name appeared on the screen, bigger and bolder than ever before. The credits rolled, and then something unexpected happened. The screen faded to black, and a new video began to play. It was a tribute, one that Dwayne had secretly arranged. Clip after clip of Jack's greatest stunts over the years. Behind-the-scenes moments. Interviews from cast and crew talking about his impact. Then, Dwayne's voice filled the theater. Some people fight battles in the ring, in the gym, on the big screen. But real warriors? They fight battles no one sees. Jack Carter is one of those warriors. Jack's breath caught in his throat. He swallowed hard as the video showed him laughing on set, working tirelessly behind the scenes, pushing through pain with that same grin he always had. The last frame appeared, a picture of Jack, holding his championship belt, standing beside Dwayne, both of them smiling like brothers. Then, bold white letters lit up the screen. Jack Carter, a fighter, a legend, a hero. The theater erupted into a standing ovation. The applause thundered through the room, but Jack couldn't move. His hands trembled slightly as he looked around. This was real. This was for him. Dwayne leaned in, his voice low. Told you, man. The world knows your name now. Jack let out a shaky breath and chuckled, his eyes glassy. Yeah, you really did that, didn't you? Dwayne smiled. We did. The night ended with something even bigger. Dwayne took the stage and made an announcement that shook everyone in the room. A foundation, the Jack Carter Stunt Academy, a place where young stunt performers would train under the best, where safety, passion, and skill would be honored the way Jack had always believed they should be. Jack wiped a hand over his face, shaking his head. You just don't stop, do you? Dwayne grinned. Nope, and neither do you. Jack laughed softly, but in his heart he knew the truth. Even if his body wouldn't let him keep going, his legacy never would stop. Jack Carter's story is a reminder that true heroes don't always wear capes. They fight battles no one sees, and their legacy lives on forever. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. And if you want to see more unforgettable moments, watch the videos appearing on your screen right now.